Another late night at the desk. Another file that proves the oldest rule in the book. Blood might be thicker than water, but money is thicker than everything. I've spent years looking at the wreckage families leave behind when the will is read. But this case? This one's special. It's about a man named Arthur Sterling. Arthur didn't believe in unconditional love. He believed in transactions. He didn't raise children. He managed a portfolio of dependents. For 40 years, he bought their loyalty with Wagyu beef dinners, luxury cars, and the biggest carrot of them all dangling right in front of their noses, a $10 million life insurance policy, payable upon his death. His kids didn't visit him because they loved him. They visited him to check on their investment. But Arthur had a secret. The well had run dry. He'd been living on credit and lies for years. And that big $10 million payout they were waiting for? I'm looking at the document right now. It's got one word stamped across it in red ink: void. Tonight, we're opening the file on a father who realized too late that when you treat your family like employees, they don't mourn you when the paycheck bounces. They just walk away. A bone-chilling story based on true events that proves reality is often darker than fiction. Welcome to Heirloom Scars.
They say you can't buy love, but I have always found that to be a lie told by poor people to make themselves feel better about their empty bank accounts. You can buy love. You just have to pay the premiums on time. And for 40 years, I had never missed a payment. I sat at the head of the long mahogany dining table, the kind that seats 12 but only ever hosted 4. The silence in the room was punctuated only by the scrape of silver knives against fine china and the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that felt less like time passing and more like a countdown. To my right sat my eldest, Julian. At 42, he was a hedge fund manager who wore his stress like a second skin. He hadn't beaten the S&Amp wink with tongue sticking out 500 since the 2008 crash, but he still drank scotch that cost more than a teacher's salary. To my left was Sarah, my daughter, fiddling with a Cartier bracelet that caught the chandelier's light. I knew for a fact she couldn't afford it. Her interior design business was a vanity project I had been quietly subsidizing for a decade. And across from me was Eric, the youngest, checking his watch every 3 minutes as if he had somewhere better to be. He didn't. "The beef is excellent, Dad," Julian said, slicing through the meat with surgical precision. He flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile he usually reserved for clients he was about to overcharge. "Really tender. Better than the club." "It's authentic Japanese Wagyu, Julian," I said, not looking up from my plate. "That single roast cost more than your first car." They laughed. A polite, synchronized ripple of laughter that echoed hollowly off the high ceilings. It wasn't the laughter of family, it was the laughter of employees humoring the CEO because quarterly bonuses were due. This was the deal we had made, unspoken but signed in blood decades ago. I didn't hug them when they scraped their knees. I bought them ponies. I didn't attend their school plays. I funded the new theater wing and put their names on a plaque. I taught them that affection was a commodity, a transactional exchange. Now, in the twilight of my life, I was simply the bank manager of their affection. They showed up every Sunday like clockwork. They called on my birthday. They tolerated my rambling stories about the 80s boom. And in exchange, they waited for the grand prize. The legacy life insurance policy. $10 million. Tax-free. To be split 3 ways the moment my heart stopped beating. It was the gravity holding this family in orbit. It was the only reason Julian wasn't checking his emails under the table, and the only reason Sarah wasn't scrolling through Instagram. I was worth more to them dead than alive, but as long as I was alive, they had to play the part of the devoted children. "So, Dad," Eric started, swirling his vintage Cabernet, looking for an opening. "Dr. Evans. Surely he had the results by now? How did the checkup go? Any concerns?" He tried to sound hopeful, straining for a tone of concern, but I heard the disappointment lurking in the pause. He was looking for a timeline. He wanted to know if the payout was months away or years away. I wiped my mouth with a linen napkin, taking my time. I let them sweat. "Fit as a fiddle," I lied, my voice steady. Dr. Evans says I have the heart of a man half my age. I might live to be 100. The silence that followed lasted only a second, but it was deafening. It sucked the air out of the room. I saw them exchange quick, sharp glances, a micro-meeting of board members realizing the merger had been delayed indefinitely. That's great news, Dad, Sarah stammered, her voice tight, forcing her face into a mask of relief. We were so worried. I looked at them. My children. My investments. They looked back at me not with love, but with the cold calculation of vultures circling a carcass that stubbornly refused to die. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that the bank had been insolvent for years. They didn't know that the Wagyu beef was bought on a maxed-out credit card, or that the heat in the east wing of the mansion had been turned off to save money. The dinner plates were cleared by the housekeeper I hadn't paid in 3 weeks. We moved to the library, a room smelling of old paper, expensive cognac, and quiet desperation. This was the part of the evening I usually dreaded, yet tonight, it felt like walking toward a guillotine I had built myself. Usually, this was the time for the ask. Once the familial obligations of dinner were paid, the withdrawals began. Julian would ask for a bridge loan, Sarah would mention a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity, and Eric would just need a little help with his gambling debts. Tonight was no different. The script remained the same, only the actors were getting older. Dad, Julian cleared his throat, swirling his brandy snifter. He didn't make eye contact. I'm in a bit of a bind with the fund. The liquidity crunch in the tech sector. It's hitting us hard. I need about 200 grand. Just until next quarter. I can write you a promissory note, interest included. I need to renovate the kitchen, Dad, Sarah chimed in immediately, sensing the window of opportunity opening and not wanting to be left out. The resale value of the house depends on it, and the market is turning. If I don't do it now, I lose equity. I looked at them. The requests weren't questions, they were demands. They felt entitled to my capital. After all, they had sat through dinner. They had listened to me talk about the weather. They had performed their duties. Now they wanted their wages. My hand trembled as I reached into the inside pocket of my velvet smoking jacket. It wasn't the tremor of age, it was the tremor of a man holding a grenade with the pin pulled. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a single, folded letter. I can't give you the money, Julian, I said softly. My voice sounded small in the cavernous room. Julian's smile dropped instantly. The mask slipped. What do you mean can't? You're Arthur Sterling. Just move some assets around. Sell some stock. There are no assets, I whispered. And there is no stock. The room went dead still. Even the fire in the hearth seemed to stop crackling. Eric froze with his glass halfway to his mouth. Stop joking, Dad, Eric laughed nervously, a high-pitched sound. It's not funny. You have a weird sense of humor sometimes. The market shifted in 19, I mumbled, staring at the intricate patterns on the Persian rug because I couldn't bear to look at their faces. The bad real estate bets in commercial zoning. I leveraged the house. I leveraged the portfolio. I've been living on credit lines and second mortgages for 3 years, hoping one of the risky bets would pay off. They didn't. The banks are foreclosing next month. Julian stood up slowly. His face wasn't red with anger, it was pale with the shock of a man watching his inheritance evaporate. What about the insurance? The policy? That's separate from the estate debts. That's $10 million safe in a trust. That's why I brought this, I said, sliding the letter across the polished oak table. It moved with a hiss of paper against wood. Julian snatched it up. Sarah and Eric leaned over his shoulder, reading the text like it was a death sentence. It was a notice from the insurance company, dated 4 years ago. Subject: Notice of policy lapse. Status: void due to non-payment of premiums. You stopped paying? Sarah shrieked. It was a sound I'd never heard from her, raw, unfiltered horror. Not the scream of a grieving daughter, but the scream of a scam victim. You stopped paying the premiums? It was $20,000 a month. I pleaded, looking up at them, searching for a shred of empathy, a single drop of compassion in the desert I had created. I couldn't afford it anymore. I had to choose between the premiums or keeping up the appearance of this lifestyle. I wanted you to keep coming to dinner. I wanted you to still respect me. I thought if I kept the lights on, you wouldn't notice the foundation was rotting. Julian dropped the paper. It floated down to the floor, landing face up. The word void stared at the ceiling in bold red letters. You lied to us, Julian said. His voice was ice cold, stripped of all the fake warmth he had worn all evening. For 4 years. You let us sit here, you let us plan our futures, you let us waste our Sundays. For nothing. I'm your father. I cried out, slamming my hand on the table, tears finally spilling over. Isn't that worth something? Doesn't the fact that I raised you mean anything? Doesn't the blood in our veins count for more than a check? Julian looked at me. He tilted his head, studying me like a bad investment he should have dumped years ago. And in that moment, I saw the monster I had created staring back at me. I expected shouting. I expected thrown glasses, flipped tables, a scene from a dramatic soap opera where the family fights because they are hurt. But business decisions aren't made with screaming. They are made with silence. They are made with calculation. Julian didn't yell. He simply smoothed his silk tie. He picked up his phone, unlocked it, and cancelled whatever plans he had made for later in the week to help me with estate planning. Not because he was angry, but because it was no longer a profitable use of his time. We're leaving, Julian said. He didn't look at me. He was looking at Eric. Eric, you drove, right? My car is in the shop. Yeah, Eric said, standing up abruptly. He didn't even look in my direction. He was typing furiously on his phone, thumbs blurring across the screen. Probably texting his wife that the windfall was gone, that the lottery ticket they had been holding for years was a dud. Wait, I stood up, my legs shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Where are you going? Dessert is coming. It's creme brulee. I still have the house for another month. We can figure this out. We can sell the furniture. The bank owns the house, Arthur, Julian said. He called me Arthur. Not Dad. Not Father. Arthur. The name you use for a stranger. Or a failed business partner. But I'm sick, I stammered, playing my final card. The desperation clawed at my throat, choking me. The doctor. Dr. Evans didn't say I was fine. I lied about that too. I have a heart condition. Congestive heart failure. I might not have much time left. I can't be alone here. I need help. I need my family. Sarah stopped at the heavy oak door. She turned around. Her face was beautiful, composed, and utterly empty. For a split second, I thought she was coming back to hug me. I thought she was going to tell me that money didn't matter, that we would get through this together. She looked at me with the same expression she used when looking at a pair of shoes that were out of season. Something that used to be valuable but was now just taking up space. If you're sick, Sarah said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion, you should call an ambulance. Healthcare isn't our department. We're not nurses, Arthur. You can't just leave me. I screamed, the sound tearing from my chest. I paid for your college. I paid for your weddings. I bought you everything you own. I made you who you are. Exactly, Julian said, opening the front door. The cold winter wind rushed into the hallway, extinguishing the candles on the entryway table. You paid for a service. You paid for our time. And now, the funds have cleared. The account is empty. Transaction over. Don't do this. I begged, stumbling toward them. The heavy door clicked shut in my face. I stood alone in the hallway. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. It wasn't the peaceful silence of a home, it was the silence of a bankrupt store after the lights go out and the inventory has been seized. I walked to the window, pulling back the velvet drapes. I watched them get into Eric's car. They didn't argue in the driveway. They didn't look back at the mansion. They didn't hesitate. They just drove away, their taillights fading into the darkness like dying embers. I walked back to the dining room and sat down at the head of the empty table. The Wagyu beef was cold and congealed. The wine was unfinished. The notice that said void sat on the floor where Julian had dropped it, staring up at me like an open grave. I had spent my whole life teaching my children that everything had a price tag. I believed that every relationship was a negotiation. I just never realized that one day, the market would crash, and I wouldn't be able to afford them anymore. I poured myself one last glass of wine, alone in the dark house I no longer owned, waiting for a heart attack that would come for free.
And just like that, the transaction is complete. Arthur Sterling spent 40 years building a dynasty, only to realize he had built a house of cards inside a wind tunnel. He sat alone in that dining room, not because he was broke, but because he was bankrupt in the only currency that actually matters. He learned the hardest lesson of them all. You cannot negotiate with people who only speak the language of profit. When the money stopped, the family stopped. I have to ask you, as you sit there watching this, do you feel sorry for Arthur? Was he a victim of greedy children? Or was he the architect of his own lonely hell? Did he get exactly what he paid for? I want to hear your verdict. Go down to the comments. Tell me if Arthur deserved to eat that cold dinner alone. If you have the stomach for the truth hidden in these files, make sure you subscribe to Heirloom Scars. Turn on that notification bell. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We exhume them. And you'll want to be here for the next case file. Because next time, we are looking at a story about a golden child. A son who returned home after disappearing for 20 years to claim his inheritance. He knew every childhood memory. He knew where the spare key was hidden. He even had his mother's eyes. But there was one problem. The family dog wouldn't stop barking at him. Some secrets are buried deep. Others walk right through the front door. I'm Detective Vance. And the file is closed.